See, for Luther, the way that he read Galatians and Romans, and really the way that he understood Paul, was very much like his own challenges in the 16th century. He was challenging the institutional structure of the Catholic Church at the time. For the last century or two, the Catholic Church had become very corrupted. And part of the reason for that actually goes back 200 years prior to, in fact, the Black Death. If you know your history from the 14th century, the Black Death basically wiped out about a third of the European population. It just wiped them out within the space of a few years. And for the next 200 years, there was lots of death, lots of recurrences of this bubonic plague that had initially wiped out a massive chunk of the European population. It continued to wipe them out. And that was taking an impact into the church. What a church that had been very well established and that was built around clerics and priests and ministers who were much older and very well trained and very experienced and just generally good at their jobs. People that have gone through the long, arduous process of becoming a minister in the first place. A lot of them had died. The church was running out of ministers. Because they were just simply dying like everybody else was, and so the church numbers, the church leaders were running thin, and they didn't have people to replace them with because everybody was dying. And so anybody who was willing, they just had to rush them in. They just simply didn't have the time to train the ministers because they just needed to get them into the job, because we need people to do the job, particularly now when we've got so many people that are dying. We need people to administer the last rites. We need people basically just to try to take care of this population that is being wiped out by this disease. So it was an absolutely terrible time for everybody, and it was terrible for the church as well, because again, they were losing all their ministers, and the ones they were replacing them with were just not very good. They were younger, or they were coming in for reasons that were not to do ministry. They were just seeing the opportunities that was afforded to people in positions of power. And so people were coming in for any reason apart from Christ. And what that led to was a lot of corruption. It led to a lot of very bad people in those positions who were abusing their positions. And so you extend that out over a couple of hundred years, and what that becomes is a church that's deeply corrupted. It's a church that is filled with people who are just there for the wrong reasons and who are abusing their positions. And so what Luther was reacting against was a church that had declined. It was a church that had corrupted because of these natural circumstances. And in particular, what he was really raging against was this idea of indulgences. This idea that says, you're going to go to purgatory for this awfully long time, but if you buy these indulgences, basically if you give us money, we can take some time off your purgatory. And so Luther looked at that and he just said, this is intolerable. This is not the message of Christ. And so he went back to the text. He went back to in that case, he went back to his Greek Bible, his Greek texts of Paul's letters, and he just read them again for himself. And he looked at them all closely and he said, this just doesn't line up with what I think I understand about who Paul is. And so he looked at these texts again and he realized, hey, you know what, that's not here. What these guys are doing is just not true. That's not what Paul preached. And so from that develops this idea of, no, it's not about indulgence. It's not about the church being the conduit of salvation. Salvation comes through Christ alone. There is no other way to be saved apart from Jesus Christ. And that was always Paul's message. And so this idea, this church that is insisting that, no, we are the conduits of salvation and you can't be saved without us, it's just simply false. And so what that ultimately leads to is this Protestant Reformation.